At sunrise on the day of her wedding, I sat alone in a roadside motel off Interstate 64, watching steam rise from a paper coffee cup that had already gone cold. The room smelled of bleach and the last man's regret. Somewhere beyond the lake outside, birds were waking, but none sang. The silence felt earned. The carpet was threadbare. The mattress caved toward the center like it couldn't bear its own weight. The heater clicked every 7 seconds, like a nervous ticket had never gotten therapy for. I could have stayed anywhere with the money they gave me. But anonymity doesn't live in beachfront hotels. It lives here behind drywall and half-wiped mirrors. It lives in places where no one says your name. 3 weeks ago, I signed my absence into permanence. The divorce papers arrived in a plain white envelope. No note, no explanation, just signatures notarized and cold. Hers was practiced, almost elegant, like she'd been waiting for this. Mine was slower, not because I hesitated, but because I knew what I was doing wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something she didn't see coming. They didn't ask for a meeting. They summoned one. It happened at her parents' estate in Virginia. Big place. The kind of house that brags without needing to. I'd been there 100 times during the marriage, birthdays, forced holidays, Sunday brunches where you're judged by the cut of your steak and your silence. William and Cynthia ran that house like a museum. Clean lines, quiet corners, no room for dust, no room for men like me. That night, they didn't even offer drinks. No pleasantries, no welcome, just a long marble table with a single folder waiting at the center. Shepard, family lawyer and family friend, though I was never sure which came first, was already seated. His tie was navy, his expression neutral. But his eyes flicked over me like I was already history. I sat, didn't shake hands, didn't ask questions. The envelope was pushed forward like a dare. Inside, divorce terms, NDA settlement offer. $3 million in exchange for silence. No public statements. No interviews. No contact with Jenna. No mention of what came before. They didn't call it hush money. Shepard used the phrase gesture of respect, as if being paid to disappear was a compliment. I remember flipping through the papers slowly, page by page. I didn't need to read them. I had already seen the ending. This was just a formality, the performance before the curtain dropped. They thought they'd written the final scene. They didn't know I was just getting started. The numbers were clean. The account information was real. The money had already been wired. It wasn't just silence they were buying. It was erasure. They wanted to make sure that when Jenna stepped into her new life with Greg, the fiancé, the boss, the polished upgrade, there would be no trace of what came before. No rumors. No loose ends. No man standing in the wings holding a decade of receipts. I signed. Not out of weakness. Out of calculation. Because there's power in accepting the role they think you're too proud to play. William didn't speak during the meeting. He just nodded once when the pen left my hand. Cynthia offered a smile that didn't reach her cheeks. Shepard closed the folder, tucked it into his briefcase, and stood like we had just concluded a real estate deal instead of cutting a man from his own history. They expected me to vanish. But I didn't go far. I checked into the motel the next morning. Paid cash. Room 106. Curtains drawn. Sea humming. No one asked where I came from. No one cared. And that's how I knew I was finally in a place that made sense. For 2 days I slept. The kind of sleep that's less about rest and more about withdrawal. I let the weight of the last 9 years drain from my muscles like poison. No phone. No internet. Just the ceiling fan and the sound of my own breathing. On the 3rd day I started digging. Not out of suspicion. Out of habit. Because silence doesn't stay quiet forever. It echoes. I logged into old accounts. Jenna and I had shared a cloud drive once, meant for tax documents, medical forms, bills. She'd forgotten to unlink it. Inside I found a trail. Not obvious, but real. A calendar entry moved from doctor's appointment to meeting with G. An invoice from a downtown hotel, dated 2 weeks before our final therapy session. An email from her sister about being there for you no matter what. Time-stamped 4 days before she told me we needed space to think. None of it proved anything. But none of it felt right either. Then came the real slip. An auto-forwarded email sent to my backup Gmail, the one we used when the main account got hacked years ago. It was from a lab. Subject line: prenatal paternity test, confirmation of receipt. I stared at it for 5 straight minutes. It was dated the week before the settlement meeting. They hadn't even waited for the ink to dry before confirming the future. She was pregnant, and someone wasn't sure whose it was. I should have felt rage. But what I felt was clarity. The kind of sharp awareness that cuts through denial like glass through skin. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a cover-up. This wasn't about moving on. It was about making sure I didn't linger. Not in memory. Not in photos. Not in DNA. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't forward it. I just saved it. And then I waited. 2 days later, the silence cracked. It started with a voicemail. Jenna's mother. Her voice was a thin wire stretched too tight. "Call me," she said. "Now, please." I didn't. Next came the email. "Greg. Short. Angry. Call me. We need to talk. Shepard says this is serious." And then finally Jenna. Her message was different. No subject line. Just 5 words in the body. "It's not what you think." She was right. It was worse. I sat on the motel bed, staring at the blue light from my laptop, and I could feel it all shifting. Their perfect narrative was cracking. Whatever lie they'd built to stand on, it was starting to buckle. Because here's the thing about silence. It makes people sloppy. They thought I was gone. They thought I'd cashed out and moved on. But I was right here watching. Shepard's name appeared on a second document, linked to the same lab. Same test. Same request. I looked at the screen. His signature. His initials. The same man who handed me $3 million to walk away. And then it clicked. It wasn't Greg. And it wasn't random. Shepard was the one they were really protecting. He wasn't just the lawyer. He was the secret. And now the secret had weight. I closed the laptop. In the next room, someone slammed a door. A dog barked outside. The sun crept higher over the lake. They had paid me to disappear. But they forgot something. You can't bury the past when it still knows your name. And I hadn't said my last word. I didn't leave because I was afraid. I left because I needed distance to see the whole picture. When you're standing inside the fire, all you feel is heat. But when you step back, you see the source. You see where it started. Who lit the match. Who stood by and watched it burn. The motel became more than a place to sleep. It became a waiting room for truth. Beige walls. Rusted sink. A humming sea that sounded like it was holding its breath. It was the kind of room where time slows down, where thoughts don't just whisper, they scream. And in that screaming, I started to hear the pieces fall into place. I wasn't just removed. I was extracted. Cut out with surgical precision. No leaks. No traces. The settlement was worded so carefully, so painfully exact. It could have been written by a man trying to bury a body, not end a marriage. It wasn't about closure. It was about control. The deeper I looked, the more obvious it became. The non-disclosure agreement wasn't boilerplate. It had specific phrasing, no discussion of prior paternity disputes, no mention of alternative custody matters. The words were lawyered to death, smoothed over until they didn't just end a marriage. They erased it, rewrote it. There was a timeline hidden inside those clauses. A clock counting backwards from the moment I signed to the moment they decided I had to. And that's when I started watching dates. Jenna's first appointment with the new therapist had been exactly 4 days before the hotel invoice. 2 weeks after that, her work email showed a calendar block labeled Executive Lunch, G. I remembered that day. She came home late, said she'd run into traffic, said she'd grab takeout to make up for it. I said it was fine. I said I trusted her. Then came the prenatal paternity email. It had been filed in a subfolder. Auto-forwarded from an old account she must have forgotten we still had access to. The subject line wasn't alarming unless you knew what it meant. Specimen confirmed. Results pending. It wasn't Greg's name on the order. It was Shepard's. That detail was everything. Greg was the cleanup crew, the respectable future. But Shepard, he was the real story. The man behind the curtain. The one they weren't prepared to explain. That's why I got paid. Not to protect Jenna. Not to protect Greg. But to protect the one mistake they couldn't afford to make public. Jenna's lawyer had slept with his client. And then tried to bury the evidence under layers of legality and cash. And me? I was the final complication. The man who might have been the father. The man who had a story to tell, if anyone ever asked. But no one did. Not the media. Not the neighbors. Not even friends. Everyone went quiet in record time. It was like I died and they'd held a memorial without telling me. And that silence? It wasn't natural. Someone was managing the fallout before it happened. Which is why, when I received the second email, I knew I was still being watched. It came from a burner account. No name. No subject. Just a forwarded confirmation from a courier service. Package signed by Greg. Attached was a digital signature and a delivery receipt. The package? Same address as the lab. Same day as the settlement meeting. Someone had sent Greg the results. Hand-delivered. While I was being ushered out of my own life, he was being handed the truth. And he still married her. Unless he didn't know everything. Unless the results weren't what they expected. That's when I stopped searching and started waiting. Silence is louder when it isn't your own. I knew it wouldn't take long. 2 days later, my phone rang. The number was blocked, but I answered anyway. You stop fearing unknown numbers after you've already been erased. It was Jenna's mother. Her voice was polite panic, dressed up in concern, like she was afraid I'd hang up before the mask dropped. Have you spoken to Jenna? She asked. No. A pause, just long enough to swallow her pride. There's been confusion. Something's come up. Shepard said you might have gotten an email? I didn't answer. I let the silence hang. She filled it. We think there's been a mistake. That word again. Mistake. It always means the truth got out too early. Then the line shifted. Greg's voice cut in. Loud. Clipped. Barely holding it together. They're saying the kid's not mine. That's not possible. Shepard swore. He didn't finish. His voice cracked. And then, finally, Jenna's voice. Soft. Calm. Deadly. It's not a mistake. For words. Just like her last message. And just like that, the silence changed shape. It wasn't avoidance anymore. It was defense. They weren't quiet because they'd won. They were quiet because something had gone wrong. The plan had cracked. The story had leaked. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. Because storms don't start with thunder. They start with pressure. She hung up first. The line went dead. But I kept the phone to my ear, listening to the nothing, because that nothing was everything I needed to hear. I was supposed to be gone. I was supposed to be bought. And yet, somehow, I was still here, breathing in their ruin like smoke from a fire they lit with their own hands. The next day, social media went dark. Jenna's pages locked. Greg's LinkedIn disappeared. Even William's public statements vanished from his firm's website. It was damage control in real time, a digital scrub. That's when the messages started. Not emails, not texts, notes, handwritten, slipped under the motel door. The first was on hotel stationery. The handwriting was rushed. It's not Greg, and it's not random. No name, no signature, just that. The second came 2 days later. If you want proof, meet me. 7 a.m. Diner off Route 12. Booth 3. I have the audio. No threats. No demands. Just an offering. And I went. Of course I went. The diner was old. Fake chrome. Real grease. The kind of place where secrets smell like bacon and burnt coffee. I got there early. Booth 3 was already taken. A man in a baseball cap sat with a phone on the table, screen up. He didn't say hello. He just slid the phone forward. I pressed play. Shepard speaking. I'm the father. And you are not going to destroy a family over biology. Do you understand me? Then silence. Then a second voice. Greg's. You lied. You swore. And then static. The file ended. The man took the phone back, stood, and left without a word. No explanation. No demands. It wasn't about money. It was about guilt. Someone inside the machine wanted the truth to bleed. And I was the only one left who could make it matter. I didn't flinch. I saved the audio. I backed it up twice. And then I made a plan. Not for revenge. Not for court. But for clarity. Because the world only remembers what you make them look at. And they were going to look. They thought I'd been paid to disappear. But all they bought was a front row seat. Now they'd see the rest. At 10:02 a.m. On Friday, my phone rang. It buzzed once before I picked up. I didn't even check the number. I already knew who it would be. When you sit still long enough, the truth comes knocking. I've been waiting for that knock. Jenna's mother spoke first. Her voice was calm the way glass is calm before it breaks. "Hello," she said, like we were strangers meeting for the first time. "I wanted to apologize for how things ended. There's a lot going on right now." I didn't answer. She filled the silence with static words, the kind people use when they know the real ones would shatter them. "We may have miscalculated. The timing, the test results. It's all a bit confusing right now." I could hear the panic hiding behind her vowels. Then, Greg's voice shoved its way onto the call. He didn't waste time. "They're saying the kid's not mine. No greeting. No formality. Just a fact hurled like a brick through glass. They're saying the DNA doesn't match. I don't—" He paused, catching himself. "We were engaged. We weren't even sleeping together when the conception window started. Shepard said it was just a precaution. But now they're saying—" He stopped. Silence again. The kind that builds when no one wants to say what they know. Then, like a curtain being pulled open too fast, Jenna's voice cut through. "It's not a mistake. Just that. For words. Same tone as the email. Same tone as the call before. As if speaking louder might make it seem less real. But it was real. And now it was undeniable. They'd spent weeks pretending I didn't exist. And now they were calling me like I was the last piece left on the board. I stayed quiet, because silence is power. I let her sit in the wreckage of her sentence. Greg tried to speak again, but his voice broke halfway through. "You said it was clean. You said it was handled." He wasn't talking to me anymore. He wasn't even talking to her. He was talking to the version of her that had lied to his face and made him believe it was love. There's a moment when a man realizes he's been used. Not for his heart, not for his loyalty, but for his convenience. That moment changes him. I could hear it happening live. Jenna didn't argue. She didn't deny. She just let it hang. Because you can only lie for so long before the weight of the truth crushes the air out of your chest. I ended the call without a word. I didn't need to say anything. They were already drowning. And I was done throwing ropes to people who spat on my hands. After that, the fallout came fast. Faster than I thought it would. Her social media went blank. Greg's firm scrubbed his bio from the website. Photos disappeared. Comments vanished. Invitations were retracted. The wedding, originally scheduled for Saturday, was postponed indefinitely. They didn't say why, but everyone knew. In circles like theirs, rumors spread faster than facts. And this one didn't need much help. You don't postpone a $200,000 wedding because you misplaced a napkin order. The pressure built in the silence they tried to maintain. And then it cracked. Another note. Slipped under my motel door like the last two. This one was different. It was short. Scrawled. Shaking handwriting. "I know you have the file. I know about the audio. They're going to bury it. I won't let them. But you have to move first." No name. No instructions. Just urgency. And fear. I knew then that I wasn't the only one who'd been watching. Someone else had been waiting too. Someone with more to lose. Someone close enough to hear Shepard speak before he covered his tracks. That same night, I received a second recording. This one was sent via encrypted link. No message. No sender. Just the file name. Cass_STMT_4. It opened with the sound of a hallway. Heels clicking. A door closing. Then a woman's voice. "Jenna's. You said you'd take care of it. You said no one would find out." Shepard replied, steady as ever. I took care of it. Paid him. I paid you. You agreed to the terms. I agreed because you said the child was yours. You said you knew. I said what needed to be said. You lied. I protected all of us. Another silence. And then Jenna again, this time softer, broken. You ruined everything. No, Shepard said. You did. When you picked the wrong man to lie to. The audio ended. And so did any trace of doubt. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a strategy. Executed with precision. Funded with wealth. Sanitized by lawyers. And now it was unraveling. I sat back on the motel bed, listening to the recording again and again until the words stopped sounding like voices and started sounding like confessions. The next morning, the settlement lawyer, another man from Shepard's firm, called me. Mr. Dawson, he said, we've reviewed some new information. It appears there's been some misunderstanding. I let him finish his rehearsed apology. I let him walk through every sentence they drafted to sound like concern. And when he asked if I'd consider a revision to the agreement, more money, more privacy, a deeper NDA, I told him what he already feared. No more silence. I wasn't asking for anything. I wasn't threatening anything. I was informing him. The days of being the erased man were over. I was done pretending their shame was mine to carry. The next day I got a visit. Not a call. Not a letter. A visit. William himself showed up. Pulled up in a black sedan. Stepped out in a suit so stiff it could have walked itself into the lobby. He didn't ask to come in. He just stood outside the door. I didn't move. Eventually, he knocked once. I opened the door. He looked older. Thinner. Not physically, but morally. Like the weight of the lie had finally started digging into his ribs. I didn't know, he said. I stared at him. I didn't know Shepard was involved. I thought it was Greg's. That was the deal. I didn't respond. I just wanted her to have a clean start, to be done with the past. The past? I repeated, voice dry. You mean me? He didn't answer. I gave you $3 million, he said finally. You were supposed to be free. You had no reason to stay involved. You didn't give me $3 million to be free, I said. You gave it to feel clean. He flinched. I stepped back and closed the door without another word. Behind that door I felt it. Not victory. Not satisfaction. Just a shift. I wasn't their problem anymore. I was their proof. And proof doesn't go away. That weekend, every digital trace of them went dark. Jenna's accounts, gone. Greg's business page replaced with a placeholder. Wedding vendors started refunding deposits without explanation. Even the florist, who had posted centerpieces 2 days earlier, deleted the photos. It was the kind of silence that follows a gunshot. The kind that tells you not to ask. But the press was beginning to circle. Not publicly. Not yet. But I saw the clues. An email from a local paper asking for clarification on the sudden event changes. A missed call from a blocked number that left no voicemail but rang twice again that night. People were asking questions. And behind all that noise, they were still trying to fix it. Still treating the truth like a mess to clean up instead of a fact to live with. They hadn't reached out again. Not since William stood outside the motel door trying to act like guilt was nobility. But that wasn't silence. It was staging. I knew something was coming. They weren't the type to give up control. Not after investing this much in keeping the lie alive. They'd find a new angle. A new contract. Maybe a PR leak to shift the narrative. Complicated medical results. Unexpected timing. Or my favorite, deeply personal family matter. They'd find some elegant phrase to rewrite betrayal as miscommunication. But before they could, something shifted. Came from outside. A stranger. Another note, same handwriting as before. Slid under my door at 5:43 a.m. I know because I was already awake, sitting in the motel chair staring at the wall like it owed me answers. This time, the paper wasn't folded. Just 4 words. They're setting you up. No punctuation. No signature. I looked at the door. No sound outside. No footsteps. Whoever left it was already gone. But I knew it wasn't random. This wasn't just someone venting guilt. This was a warning. And it arrived right on time. Because less than 12 hours later, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. He was polite, apologetic, said he was just following orders. Complaint had been filed. Something about unlawful recordings, distribution of private materials, violation of confidentiality, not charges, not yet, but a report, an official mark. That was the move. That was their angle. Paint me unstable, bitter, a liability who'd broken the terms of his own agreement. Shift the lens. Blur the truth until it looked like harassment. I asked for the document. Read every word. Saw the phrasing. Shepard alleges. Shepard believes. Shepard feels threatened. No evidence. Just structure. It was enough to delay questions. Enough to make reporters hesitate. Enough to buy them time. They wanted a pause button. I wasn't going to give it to them. That night I packed. Not everything. Just what mattered. Laptop. Audio backups. Paper trail. The original NDA annotated. And the file. The recording that changed everything. I left the motel at 3 a.m. Took the back road east, no GPS. Just instinct and paranoia. Found a diner that didn't close, the kind with one waitress and a coffee pot older than its plates. I sat in the corner booth. Same one as before. And waited. I didn't call anyone. Didn't post. Didn't write a word. I just waited. And at 7:14 a.m. someone sat across from me. Ball cap. Gray hoodie. Sunglasses too big for his face. He didn't speak. Just slid me a USB drive. I didn't ask where it came from. I plugged it into my laptop, ignoring the tremor in my hands. 2 files. One was audio. The other video. I played the video first. It opened with Shepard. In his office. Door closed. Phone on speaker. Camera hidden somewhere in a bookshelf. The angle was crooked but clear. Delete it, he said. A pause. You heard me. Delete the footage. Wipe the lab files. Get the nurse to say it was a mix-up. Another voice. Greg's. No. We're past that. It's too late. Then we shut him down. How? We open the NDA. Say he broke it. We file a complaint. Get him painted unstable. He's already isolated. Greg didn't answer. Shepard leaned forward. 3 million is cheaper than a scandal. If we bury him now, the rest won't matter. He has no leverage. The clip ended there. I didn't react. Didn't move. Because everything I already suspected had just been confirmed. Not in theory. In fact. In frame. In high-definition betrayal. The man across from me didn't speak. He didn't need to. We both knew what this was now. Not just a lie. Not just a cover-up. But a war of narratives. They were trying to erase me in real time. And they had the money, the lawyers, and the reach to do it. But I had something else. The one thing they'd underestimated. I had patience. I had truth. And I had nothing left to lose. I thanked the stranger. He nodded once, stood, and left without finishing his coffee. I stayed. Sat in that booth long enough to watch the sun climb fully over the horizon. Watched the diner staff change shifts. Watched the same song play twice on the jukebox. And then I made a choice. No more hiding. No more waiting for their next move. It was my turn. The first thing I did was send a copy of the video to 3 places. My attorney, a journalist I knew from years back, and a secure drive I only accessed once before, in 2019 during the worst financial audit of my life. The second thing I did was call Jenna. She didn't answer. I didn't leave a voicemail. I sent a message instead. 6 words. You have until Monday. Publicly. Truthfully. Clean. No threats. No demands. Just the offer of an honest reckoning. I didn't expect a reply, but I got one. 5 hours later. Not from her. From Shepard. A text. 1 line. Meet. Monday. Noon. Our office. I stared at the message until my phone screen dimmed. Then I smiled for the first time in weeks. Because now the lights were coming on. And nothing looks clean in daylight. We didn't go to court. That was the first thing I made clear when I walked into Shepard's office on Monday at noon. No courthouse steps, no press gaggle, no public spectacle. Just a conference room on the 22nd floor, glass walls, muted carpet, and a table polished enough to reflect every lie back at the people who told it. Jenna was already there. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not thinner, emptier, like someone had hollowed her out and forgotten to put anything back inside. Her parents sat on either side of her, rigid and silent. William's hands were folded so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Cynthia stared straight ahead, lips pressed together, as if acknowledging me would somehow legitimize what I knew. Shepard entered last. Still composed. Still controlled. The same man who had slid me an envelope and assumed that would be the end of me. He nodded once, professionally, like we were about to discuss quarterly projections instead of the wreckage of their lives. "Thank you for coming," he said. I didn't sit. "I'm not here for apologies," I said. "And I'm not here for more money." That got their attention. Shepard hesitated, just long enough to confirm he'd miscalculated. Jenna looked up at me for the first time, eyes glassy, searching for something. Mercy, maybe, or permission to speak. I gave her neither. "I didn't come to renegotiate silence," I continued. "I came to end it." I placed the files on the table, one by one. Audio transcripts, time-stamped emails, the video stills printed and annotated, the NDA with my notes in the margins. Every clause they'd hoped would keep me buried highlighted in yellow. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The truth carries its own weight. Shepard's face drained of color as he flipped through the pages. He didn't deny anything. That was the tell. Men like him don't confess. They calculate losses. William finally spoke. "What do you want?" There it was. The question they'd prepared for. They thought I'd name a number. I shook my head. The answer was never money. Jenna flinched. "I want 3 things," I said. "First, my name restored. Publicly. No vague statements. No medical ambiguity. You tell the truth about the affair, the pregnancy, and the lie. All of it." Cynthia inhaled sharply, like I'd slapped her. "Second," I continued, "everything that was taken under false pretenses comes back. Assets, property, accounts. Not as a favor, as correction." Shepard swallowed. "And third," I said, "you take responsibility for the children involved. Not quietly, not through lawyers. Public acknowledgement. No more smokescreens. No more men paid to disappear." The room was silent. Jenna started to speak. I raised my hand. "Don't," I said calmly. "You already said enough when you let them speak for you." Her mouth closed. Tears welled but didn't fall. I felt nothing watching it. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just distance. William leaned back in his chair, defeated. "If we do this," he said, "it will destroy reputations." "You already destroyed mine," I replied. "This just balances the ledger." Shepard cleared his throat. "If we agree." "The recordings? I don't want them released," I said. "I want them unnecessary." That was when he understood. This wasn't extortion. It was exposure prevention through honesty. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Language was debated. Timelines argued. But the outcome never changed. They knew what would happen if they refused. And for the first time, their money couldn't buy a cleaner ending. When it was done, the room felt stripped bare. Agreements rewritten. NDAs dissolved. New statements drafted, truthful ones for once. As we stood to leave, Jenna finally looked at me again. Her voice was barely audible. "I never meant for it to go this far." I paused at the door. "That's the thing," I said without turning around. "It always does." I left the building alone. The city felt different afterward. Louder, sharper, like the world had come back into focus. I walked for blocks without direction, letting the weight lift from my shoulders inch by inch. The next morning, I stood on the boardwalk with a cup of gas station coffee, watching the water roll in slow, indifferent waves. My phone buzzed with notifications I didn't open, headlines I didn't read. I wasn't a winner. I wasn't a hero. I was just a man who no longer carried someone else's burden. And that was enough. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the lie to stop where the child began. So we rewrote the agreement. Cut out the silencing. Cut out the mask. They signed. Not because they believed, but because they had no choice left. Jenna tried to speak as the ink dried. I stopped her with a glance. You said enough when you let them speak for you. That silence was more honest than anything she could have said. The next morning, I walked the boardwalk again. Gas station coffee. Cold air. Nothing in my hands. Nothing on my shoulders. Not erased. Not rewritten. Just free. Not a father anymore. Not a villain. Not a ghost. Just a man no longer drowning in other people's secrets. And the child? One day, they'll know the truth didn't disappear. It was buried. And then it dug its way out. The airport buzzed like nothing had changed. I stood at the counter holding 4 tickets. Booked with my own miles. Greg's stepson, Zach, smirked. He doesn't even have our last name. I didn't reply. 1 minute later, TSA flagged them. For boarding passes canceled. Wrong names. Wrong IDs. The system rejected them like the truth rejects liars. I watched the plane take off through the glass. They didn't. It wasn't revenge. It was memory. Proof I existed. Proof I carried them further than their names ever could. And when they finally looked back, there'd be no one standing in the way. Only silence. The kind that tells you, this seat was never yours. And now it's gone.